What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's always our privilege to show up with you each and every week to put a smile on your face, get your thoughts moving, maybe your body's moving a little bit, support you while you're maybe working out already and getting after it. So we appreciate you being here and we appreciate the space you allow us to show up in your life. This week, I'm excited to bring on a guest from across the world in Australia again. It's always fun, one, meeting people from there, and then two, trying to coordinate schedules with the time differences. So I'm excited that we got that all worked out. We have the privilege of hosting Yildiz Sethi, an innovative thinker, best-selling author, and trailblazer in the world of mental health, which you know is super intriguing to me. She's the author of Let's Take the Crap Out of Psychotherapy, a book that aims to revolutionize the way we approach healing and growth by breaking down complex therapeutic concepts into practical, empowering methods. So I'm excited to get her on the show and talk about this, right? Mental health for our first responders, for our military veterans. Like, it's such a big thing nowadays. So if we can look some different ways to reach people, some different out of the box methodologies and strategies to get people feeling better about themselves and what they went through and where they're going, I'm all for it. So before we get to this interview, I want to ask, though, that you help us out. Get on your favorite podcast apps, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever your social media is, and like, subscribe, share so that we continue to reach more people around the world with our goal to be the most impactful podcast there is, right? That podcast that gets people wanting more in life, gets them helping realize they're capable of more, realize that, man, life is right around us right now. It's not someplace down the road. So do us a favor, help us out with that, help us continue to grow. We appreciate you all, and we're excited for this week's interview with Yildiz Sethi. Enjoy the show. Yildiz, my newest friend, welcome from across the world to the On Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
Well, very well. And really looking forward to our talk today. Yes.
I'm always excited to have somebody from around the world because it's tomorrow there for you, for us. So you can kind of tell me how the night goes because I haven't lived it yet.
Well, I'm in Australia in Queensland, and we are about 14 hours ahead of you in Australia in US. So yes, it's about 8 a.m. in the morning now. It's fresh, it's bright, it's sunny. We are in our autumn, whereas you're heading into your spring.
Yeah.
So we're on the opposite sides of the world experiencing different things, but that's all good. I was born in UK, so I've also traveled, had to experience living in Europe and here now where I am in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like it down there?
Love it. Really love it. It's compared to Europe, and I've been to America a couple of times as well. It's very quiet. There are fewer people here. And for me, that seems perfect, right? I know now when I go back to particularly England, where I came from, it feels almost claustrophobic when I get off the plane. It's just so dense, so heavy, and there's just so many people. I think, oh my gosh. I've got used to my quieter existence here in Australia because I live on a place called Mount Tamborin, which is a wonderful tourist destination, actually. But it's a beautiful forested green area that, is absolutely pristine. So, yeah, I love it here. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. And what it was, I came across some of your stuff for your book, Let's Take the Crap Out of Psychotherapy. And that just resonated with you. I was excited to talk with you because anybody that challenges the status quo or what mainstream's doing, I'm always intrigued by because that's usually those thoughts and those conversations cause growth and it gets other people thinking. And I wanted to learn more about your history, your research, and what led you down that road. But before we start that, it's early in the morning there, so I got to make sure you're warmed up, that your mind's ready to go, that we're ready. So are you ready for a nice little warm up here, Yildiz?
Absolutely.
All right.
I go to bed early and I wake up bright.
All right. What are you picking? Sunrise or sunset?
What am I picking?
Which one would you pick? If you could only have one, would it
Oh,
be sunrise or
okay.
sunset?
Probably sunrise. Yes.
Why is
Yeah.
that?
It's a new day. It's a new beginning. It's exciting, new possibilities, I guess. Yes. And what
Okay.
do you pick, Jared? What do you pick? Are you a sunset person or?
No, for sure sunrise. I like the start of the day as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. All right. What's a favorite quote or a quote that's stuck with you throughout your times?
Oh, goodness me. Oh, dear me. There's many, 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 and I can't think of one right now. It's never too late to change. It's
Mm.
probably my own favorite quote. I'm not sure if anybody else said that, but that's one of mine. It's never too late to change. It's never too late for you to change and your world to change and your perspective to change. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to what we were talking about off air with you not being afraid to kind of reinvent yourself and ask questions of the status quo. So it doesn't shock me that that's something you live by, my friend.
Mm.
All right, what is a favorite book of yours?
Oh, another one. Yeah, gosh, been so many. Look, a book that really spoke to me when I was younger would have been, oh goodness me, I can't think of any right now. I've gone complete. Um, yeah, I can't think of any right
See,
now. I
that's
hope
why
you.
we do a warm up.
Yeah. Um, oh, there are so many good books, brilliant books. And I just can't think of a single one right now. I'm so
Ah,
sorry.
no worries. Yeah, it's early over there for you. What is, if you could have dinner with one person, who would you want to have dinner with? They could either still be alive or have passed away. Who would you have dinner with, and what would you want to ask them?
Albert Einstein. Um,
Oh,
he is my hero in many ways because he was a major stirrer, right? He was a major person who dared to dream and dared to visualize and dared to ask big questions. And even when people didn't agree with him, which mostly they didn't, he plowed on with it. And all this time later now, most of what he predicted or said is true, has been found to be exactly right. He was just many centuries before his time, really. So yeah, I really admire people like that who dare to dream, dare to follow their gut, and dare to stand against the wave of um, society, I guess. Yeah.
and that's been kind of a theme for you throughout your life, right? Questioning things and not just necessarily taking things at surface value.
Yes, absolutely. It's been very much my theme. And it started really even as a young kid because I was born in England to a very poor family. I was the eldest of seven children, Turkish Cypriot dad, English mom in England, born between two cultures and two religions, not really understanding any of it. It was crazy. And so that kind of set me on a journey of questions. What does this mean? What is the Islamic faith? What is the Christian faith? What are all the other faiths? What do they mean? Are they important or not? Right from the beginning, I was asking those questions. And I think when I was about 17, I read, um, the Korah. I read, the Bible. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read them. I went around just saying, Why are people so fixed on this one or this one or this one? And I just wanted to know, well, what's the difference? And when I actually read them all, I actually realized they're all the same, right? At their core, at their essence of that first person coming on and um, talk, giving their views and becoming the prophet of whatever they are, they all were all about love. They were all about oneness. They were all about forgiveness and encouraging people to be who they are and not judging and all of that. So that was wonderful for me because that kind of I thought, well, okay, I'm not missing out on anything, not having been born into a faith, which is great because, the other thing I've realized is you have to create your own faith too. You can be born into a faith, but then at the end of it, really, you have to decide what works for you. And um, and that was one of the first things. And then the second thing I was really interested in was science. I love science. I love to know what worked, and I was fascinated by the planet, the stars, the moon, the cycles, and how things worked on a physical level. And I was absolutely interested in people because I was born into a crazy family, and I often wondered, what how can you think that, or how can you behave like that, or made no sense. And so that kind of got me into realizing that, human behavior is fascinating and is often crazy. And there's a normality to it as well. I don't mind to have people who have their idiosyncrasies or their, little bit odd behaviors or whatever, because that's who they are and what they are, yeah, needing to be. And also, I guess beyond that is, I mean, following my early time, I couldn't go to university, was not allowed. My father thought that no, women don't go to university. They just have babies and they just, become a wife and waste of money. Why would you want to go to university? So I kind of couldn't do that, even though I was top of my school. I was pulled out of a school, had to go to work. Okay. So that was kind of my first thing. So I didn't actually go to so I did the conventional thing. I got married young, I had children young, and then later on in life, I went to university and I went to become a physics and chemistry teacher, which was fantastic. And I guess my thing was, how do you get yourself out of a hole? How do you get yourself from where you don't want to be to where you want to be, where you have more choices? And I really thought, I really found that education, whether it's formal or not formal, doesn't matter to me, but learning throughout your whole life is the key. So I became a teacher. I loved that for a long time. And then I did a complete about turn and I went on holiday and met three Vedic astrologers in 1 week, right? 1 week. I didn't even know what that was, right? No idea.
What'd you call that? You met three who?
Vedic, Vedic astrology, Vedic astrology,
What's
Vedic.
that?
Indian astrology, Indian
Hmm.
astrology. Goes with the yogas and yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, all of that. And I was fascinated. And so I went home with a course. And then the next year, I was just studying, studying, studying. And I really thought, no, I don't want to be a teacher anymore of physics and chemistry. I actually want to go into Vedic astrology. And of course, my friends, family, and everybody who knew me thought, wow, you can't do anything as crazy as that. But I did.
How old were you
And
at that time?
at that time, I would have been 46,
Okay,
probably.
so you got your kids are grown by then. You got
Yes, yes,
family.
yes, that's right. My kids had kind of were late teens, doing their own things, and yes, so I just gave up my job and became a Vedic astrologer, right? Looking at karmic cycles and why are we all trapped in these karmic cycles, myself included. And I thought, wow. So I did that for a while, became a Vedic astrologer, and then I realized, well, what can we do to help people, myself included, change those patterns. Those cycles were all caught in. And I went into counseling, psychotherapy, and realized very quickly how disappointed I was by that, that
Mm,
they didn't really have any real methodologies for helping people unravel it properly, other than by telling stories, right? You share. And yes, sometimes that works, but a lot of the time it doesn't work for deeper issues. And so then I became a hypnotherapist, then I did NLP, and then I discovered family constellations, which is an out of the box way of working with generational issues that we all
mm.
carry in particular, and generational trauma. And I thought, oh, thank goodness, I've finally found something that works, because the other part to this, Jared, is I'm impatient, right? This is my thing. And it's probably not a great thing to admit to, but I am. I don't see why people have to spend their whole lives, years or whatever, in therapy when you could do it quickly, right? When whatever is keeping them stuck, you can go to very quickly and help them sort it out and work with them within only a session or two, right? Literally. Now, I know that's not great for business as far as, I'm concerned or a therapist is concerned, but it feels so much better to be able to help people really well, so that they move on in their lives, and do whatever they need to do. And so that worked for ages. And then I realized, okay, family constellation is fantastic for generational stuff. But then what happens to the personal stuff, the stuff that happened to you when you were a kid, that teacher that looked at you and said you'll never amount to anything, or a parent that said something, in an angry burst that really stayed with you. And so that put me into developing something called emotional mind integration, which helps people, okay, family constellations works with the generational relational side of things, and emotional mind integration works with going to the cause of what's keeping you stuck in that belief that I'm not good enough, or that, I'll never amount to anything, or whatever it is, and helps, and it unravels it through the neural pathways, and all happens within a session, right?
Mm.
So
Hey,
now
Yildiz,
I'm a
let me stop you there for a second before we get going too far. How how's it been received for you to always be questioning what other people just accept as the fact, and that's the way of always doing business, right? Because listen to you is you're always seeking more. You're not just content where you are. How's that been for you as far as processing, and how did you handle your emotions and have the courage to move on when maybe not everybody else believes in it? Because I think that's a great example of what you're doing there for our community.
Look, frustration is what I held. And also, I believed that my way of looking at the world was not everybody else's way of looking at the world. And I also believed that we are here to question and develop and prove for ourselves. So I just didn't accept it. So it actually meant that a lot of the time within groups, particularly teacher groups, because I was the same as a teacher, I thought, look, this way of teaching is just not good enough. Let's just do it better, right? And
Right.
the people didn't want to hear that. And actually, what happened was, I suppose, in a sense, people, I hate to say this, but did they become jealous, or did they become, I wasn't part of the group that just followed like, like a sheep, I guess. I was the one that was always, hang on, why can't we do it this way? And I guess to stay as a teacher, I just had to button myself up basically to stay in the system because I didn't like the system. But I just let myself rip within a classroom. I loved teaching real little kids, cheeky kids who whatever for whatever reason, But if you actually engage with them and get what they really think and what they really want, they're with you. There was no problems. I in the school system, I had kids that were told that, oh, don't, little Johnny over there and little Susan over here, you got to watch them because they're I didn't want to hear that rubbish, I didn't want to hear it. So I said, look, when you come here, we will work things out. I'm not going to listen to what's been said. We're just going to work things out. And by even the end of a term, I had the roughest kids just doing what they do and enjoying it, right? And that's the beauty, isn't it, of not following, right? Finding ways to work with each person. And that's probably what I've done also in my therapy, right? Because again, I'm thinking, well, okay, you've been, you've supposedly been depressed for 20 years or something else for 15 years. I don't believe that
Yeah,
that there is something stuck, right? There's something we haven't been able to get to by all these other methodologies that's been used that has not been able to unlock it, right? And so that's always been my thing. And look, it's actually probably isolated me, to be absolutely honest, right?
sure.
Because I am members of psychotherapy groups and I'm members of this and I'm members of that, but actually to go to any of those meetings frustrates me to death, to be absolutely frank. Um, and so I guess I have created my own smaller groups where we can speak much more openly and we can challenge each other. And I'm quite happy to be challenged and happy to speak to others who are not going to get defensive and,
Mm,
try and shut me down. And so I guess at my stage of life, I felt, look, I have challenged, I have found better ways of working, and I'm not going to stay zipped up anymore. I'm just,
yeah.
I don't see why I should.
No,
Yeah,
I agree, and I love what you're saying there. And what I hear is you've just remained curious, and that's one of the things I stress with people as we get older. Stay curious, stay learning, ask questions, and like you said, you don't mind having people ask you questions, right? It's not just you being curious, but you attract other people that are also seeking different ways to do things,
right.
and I think that's such a great trait to have, and to encourage for our kids to remain curious, and for adults to become curious again.
Yes, absolutely. I think don't let your curiosity go, actually. I mean, I do get that people need jobs. I do get that people need to, pay their bills and put food on the table and for that they've got to keep this particular role. But I say don't let it change you internally. Don't let those questions stop. And when opportunities come up, just take them. I mean, that's really, I get that life is difficult, I'm not going to pretend it isn't. And mine has not been easy either. But just daring to make those moves when you have the opportunity is so well worth it. Because I guess one of the things I've always thought too, Jared, is, when I'm done at the end of my life and I'm
Yeah,
looking back, what will I have been glad that I did, right? Now, staying as my dad said I should, as the little woman who just becomes a mother and a grandmother and then just dies, I would have been really sad looking back on that. And by the way, I love my dad, by the way. I don't have any issues with my dad or my mom because I kind of came to an understanding that they were also conditioned, right? And it's like, they were also really conditioned into the way they had to be, and they came from cultures where it wasn't okay to question, and it wasn't okay to be not run of the mill, right? And so I kind of understood that. So I don't have any hard feelings, but I mean, today, especially with education, with supposedly free speech, which isn't so free actually, um, just push those boundaries and yeah, ask those questions and just be curious. And sometimes my curiosity has led me down a rabbit hole. Oh, this is not good.
yeah.
And then you got to come back and think, okay, well that it was worthwhile looking at it, but yeah, don't worry about that. Just what's next, you
Yeah,
know?
I want, if you wouldn't mind, I would like you to explore one thing here before we move forward and that's that what you just said there, that you don't hold any feelings poorly towards your parents because they did what they knew or what they thought was best at the time. They didn't know any different. And sometimes we don't let go, right? We move forward, but we're still holding on to the past, and then we can't get to where we're supposed to go, being tied back. So
Right.
how would you say you did that, or what would you say for our community members that are maybe needing it's the people closest to them that might be holding them back?
Yes. Okay, it's a huge question, Gerard, huge, because this is central to my work, right? This is why I love family constellations. And that was developed by somebody called Bert Hellinger, who is also, oh, Corey, you asked me before about a book. Acknowledging What Is by Bert Hellinger
See,
changed my life.
I knew it would come up.
Acknowledging What Is by Bert Hellinger changed my life. Because I was in a bookshop in Sydney just browsing. I was a counselor by then, a bit frustrated. This counseling business doesn't work very well from my perspective. I know other people might think differently. And this little book, brown book, jumped off the bookcase into my hands. That's how it felt. It had nothing to it. It was brown. It was brown and white, little. And I just picked it up and opened it, and within the first page, oh wow, that is amazing. And so I did actually, obviously, buy the book, read it cover to cover very quickly, was blown away, and thought, family constellations, I really would love to see this in action. But he was in Germany at that time. I'm in Sydney. I'm thinking, not much chance. And so I kind of put it away in my mind, even though I kept going back to it and thinking, wow, I'd love to see this in action. Anyway, a couple of years later, I'm on holiday in India, traveling around, doing a backpacking thing with my husband. And we stayed at a place, and, next day, walking through that place, a big sign, family constellations, come and have a look. Wow, right?
Right.
Talk about falling. I couldn't believe my luck. So, of course, we went, and of course, we loved it. And of course, there was a training straight afterwards. So, we gave up the rest of our holiday and did the training. And then I came home as a family constellations practitioner. Now, the thing about family constellations is, and it was written by Bert Hellinger, who was a Catholic priest for many years. And then when he came out of the Catholic priesthood, he decided to become a psychotherapist. And he too, right, couldn't find anything that worked for him because it didn't go far enough. And so he developed something called family constellations, which is the idea that we come from our mother and our father, and we carry both of them within us. And within all of that are all the limitations of our cultures that they came from. But to, um, our purpose in life is to undo our conditioning, right? Now, that second thing that I've just come from there came from Osho. And he said, your purpose in life is to undo your conditioning. And so that you can finally connect with who you are and who you're meant to be, right?
Mhm.
And so that's really the two key people in my life would probably be those two, right? I'm so in tune with that. And family constellations helps us to let go or process all the hurt, all the anger, all the sadness, disappointments, feeling excluded, not seen, not heard, etc., which is all the things I felt and probably everybody else feels too. And just let that go and actually just connect to the love that your mom feels for you and the love your dad feels for you, right? And let them keep their own beliefs, basically. Because at the end of the day, when you get to be an adult, it's your life and you can make what you want of your life. That is your God-given right if you believe in God, right? Which I do. So it is. it is your right to make the most of your life. And it's actually, for me, a sin not to do that. You know, you're missing out on so much. Um, Obviously, it's your choice if you choose not to do that. But, I have in my work, I attract people who are wanting to break free of all those shackles, basically, and be free to be who they need to be. So that's my biggest saying, be free to be you, right? That's
Yeah.
what's all on the website. And the way I'm working with family constellations works directly with your initial contacts, or being born into that little couple of your dad and mom, whoever they are, coming to some acceptance of who they are. Because if you hadn't been born through them, you would not be here,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And part of the challenge of our life is to break through all those supposed barriers that which are just figments of our mind, or society, actually. Um,
Yeah.
so as long as you don't hurt anybody else, be free to be you, is kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times to be you and to truly be you and to be what you are destined to be or what you could potentially be, you got to move past a lot of the stuff that was beyond your control, right? And that's just an area
Absolutely.
that a lot of times people struggle with is they stay anchored to. So how do you, talking about your book, let's take the crap out of psychotherapy. How do we get honest there? Because that's one of the things that sticks with me sometimes is if I have friends, I hear people that are constantly going through therapy. It's kind of like you said before, like it's just like an ongoing thing. I don't know when it ever ends for them. And a lot of times it just seems like they're in this wheel. Is that some of the
Exactly.
crap you're saying to cut out?
Yes, exactly. I would say, look, I don't want to offend all counselors and psychotherapists, right? Because I know there is a place for it. There is a place to go to a counselor or psychotherapy to discover who you are, to explore all your beliefs and feelings, etc., etc., etc. For grief and loss, definitely. For those places where you come to a crossroad in your life where you need to make changes, there's a place for it. However, if you have a sad story of, I'm not good enough, or people always ignore me, or people always betray me, or people are always using me, or, any other negative story. There's a million of them. And you keep telling the story. And this is what we're told in counseling, psychotherapy. Go to share your story, right? Go to tell your story. And telling a story, it heals. Well, it only heals if at the end of the story, you don't need to tell it anymore, right?
Mm.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
If you've told it a dozen times or a thousand times and you're still telling the same story, guess what? It hasn't worked, has it? Right? And so in those deeper things where the story is stuck, it will go down into a causal event in your life, either in your family system, family constellations, or in your personal life, in terms of what happened to you as a child or a baby, or when you were 10 or when you were 20, that you're still, still, every time you think of it, you still feel yucky about it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what's keeping you stuck. So this is why I developed emotional mind integration, so that we can go down to into that stuckness, help them to sort it out really quickly, and then come up within a session, right? And the story is no longer there, right? That belief, or that negative belief that keeps you trapped into this story, is now no longer. If When I see people who've been stuck like that for a long time and they come to me for a second session, I say, well, how is that bit about that thing you were saying? Like, oh, what? Oh, that's gone. Now I want to look at this, right? Okay, great. Right, we're moving on. That's exactly how. So this is why I say take the crap out of psychotherapy, because CBT is working with symptoms. And so is counseling working with the story that we bring of ourselves, right? but they don't attempt to go to the cause of it, probably because they don't know how to do it. And even if they did get to the cause of it, they wouldn't know how to process it. And that's where I have done my work, how to get to the cause of it and how to process it quickly. Now, the exciting thing that I share in my book is that neuroscience and epigenetics are exactly saying the same things that I'm saying, right? That it can take a split second to make that change, right? All you need is the right process to help you process it, and your neuroplasticity is going all the time and can easily reformat very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is really, so I'm using that. I mean, I didn't realize I was using neuroscience when I was doing it, but reading the research, wow, that's exactly fits so perfectly with what I'm doing. I'm not allowing all those um, protocols and beliefs, and you have to do it this way and you have to do it that way. It's not necessary. And even the idea of you have to, see people for X number of sessions to build up a rapport. Sorry, it's rubbish. You can build a rapport with somebody within the first 15 minutes and be working with them on what they really need to work in getting to the cause of a particular belief or feeling that they or pattern that they have very quickly and come out of it within the session. So
Yeah. So
so this is
go
why
ahead.
I'm changing the system. Yeah.
So emotional mind integration, right? So that's just hearing that. That means we're using emotions and our thoughts together. We're not separating,
Right. That's
right?
right. That's
Which is a
right.
huge. I've always struggled with that when we want to think about something, but we're not feeling, or we're sharing our feelings, but we're not thinking
Exactly.
through. So
They
how
both go together.
they
Yeah.
have to,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm no
Yeah.
psychotherapist, but it makes sense to me. They have to go together.
That's right.
Be,
That's
be,
right. And this is why I say we have to work holistically with people, right?
mm,
Holistically. I can't separate you from your thoughts or your feelings or your past, actually, right? And so you have to work holistically. And yes, I have discovered, certainly in family constellation, I didn't discover, well, I discovered it there, but I didn't found it.
right.
But Helen was courageous enough to bring that to the world. And he was vilified by many psychotherapists and psychiatrists for what he did, um, because it just so invalidated, I guess, the way they're working. And I guess that's what I'm doing too. So I'm aware that, people, there will be many that will not like what I'm proposing. But throughout the book, every time I have made a statement, I've put in research and from professors or well-known PhD people or um, the latest in neuroscience or the latest in epigenetics or the latest in this or the latest in that to actually show, look, it's not just me saying this, right? I'm a practitioner, that's my thing, but there are many other people in the world who are also saying, hang on, just looking at symptoms, giving them a label and then medicating them and labeling for
Mm,
life is actually a damaging way to work with the mind. And it's why our mental illness or mental health is getting worse and worse and worse, according to statistics, because everybody that turns up feeling a bit flat to the GP ends up with a diagnosis and medication and gets added to the list of people who are supposedly mentally ill.
yeah.
My thing is depression is not a mental illness. It's something we all experience at some point in life. And if you didn't experience it, I'd say, what's wrong with you? Because that's just normal.
Right. It has to be. It's no
Yeah,
different than we have rainy days so we can appreciate a sunny day.
exactly. That's
So
right.
so there was something why is it? I mean, I business wise, it's fantastic to be able to diagnose people and keep them in a process because then they're customers forever.
Exactly.
Not as
Yeah.
good a business to go ahead and fix them to where they
Yeah.
don't need you anymore.
Well,
But
yes
it's the
and yes
right
and
thing to do, right?
yeah, it's the right thing to do. And I have a busy practice, right? So it's like, for people who want what I offer, there are people there, right?
Yeah.
I have a revolving door. I see them once or twice and they're gone. And they're really happy to give my card around to their friends. And again, more people come in. So it's a different style of business, right? Um, so yes, I mean, it means that, yeah, mine's a constantly flowing, changing business, but I welcome that because it gives me such a lift to help somebody to come out of a horrible stuck place. So it's a two-way positive thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, and I think that's to me, that's the goal. When people come into counseling or come for help for any reason, the goal should be to produce results, not keep them
That's
forever
right.
to where they never progress past.
And I guess the other thing to this, Jared, is when I looked into the theory behind CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy is what is supposedly the most effective psychotherapy in the world, right?
Right.
This is the one that you go to the GP, uh, they might send you to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you get a diagnosis, you get your medication, right? This is cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, behind that whole medical model way of thinking of the mind, it comes from a belief that goes back 400 years ago. 400 years, right?
Huh.
Which says that once your mind is broken, a weird way to think of the mind, or not functioning properly, it will never recover. So psychiatrists in particular have decided that is the belief they're going to hang on to rather than the more recent beliefs that said, look, a lot of our beliefs are coming from stress, situations in life, disappointments, shocks, which can easily be fixed. And now neuroscience is saying actually what I'm saying and what others are saying now, that actually, yes, a lot of depression is due to deep sadness, right?
Mm.
Or deep hurt or helplessness, hopelessness. I can't get out of this hole kind of
Yeah.
thing. Or I did something awful and I feel terrible about it. Or it could so many things. And once we can process that, your brain has the capacity to rewire easily. The other person I should have mentioned is Norman Deutsch, who who talked about the brain that's constantly rewiring, right? Norman Deutsch.
Hmm.
He's a psychiatrist who's also broken ranks with the
Yeah.
psychiatry field in a sense, in saying that that these things can, because he's experienced too, that people can heal. There is a natural inward healing process that we all have as human beings if we can harness it, basically,
Let me
right?
ask you this, Yildiz. Do you think some of the issues, at least, and you've been to America, so you're familiar with kind of our country and some of the craziness that goes on over here now, is because we're not learning to deal with these emotions when we're young, right? So then we don't have the skills as adults. So then we go in and we got something's wrong with us, right? Like instead of being like, no, this is normal. Like you're gonna have highs and lows, ups and downs.
Yeah, yes. And yes, I agree. Look, but the other part to this is, Jared, when I was younger, when we're young, we don't have the capacity to understand emotions, and we don't have the capacity because we're such a vulnerable little thing. We so need and crave approval, right? We
Mm,
so need and crave it. So we tend to bottle things up, right? And put a lid on it. But then it becomes a disturbance in our psyche, which then pops up later as depression or anxiety or something. So certainly the earliest time it pops up is the time you can work with it, right? Um, and so if you have somebody who It's not going to label you or put you, in the mad basket, or whatever, and give you medication and say, look, you're gonna suffer this for the rest of your life, which is actually what they say. Um, then you're free then. You can go to somebody like me or any other of the people in the world who are working well and help you out of it very quickly, and you can move on in your life, right? And it becomes a bit of wisdom in the background too, right? It becomes part of your life experience. It's not just disappeared forever. You learn something through it for sure, you know.
Yeah,
One of them might be that I shouldn't listen to other people, right? Fair enough. But
sure.
there's many other things we can learn from in what happens to us. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And yes, it took courage to put out this book. And I reckoned at my age, look, who cares really? You know,
Yeah, what are they gonna do?
yeah, what are they going to do? It's
Yeah,
like, well, I'll say what I need to say, and I've verified everything I've said. And the other person too that I really have respect for is Bruce Lipton in The Science of Beliefs,
mm,
which is also an incredible um, validation of everything I've said. He also makes sure that emotions and beliefs are very much linked together, and yes, they have an effect on our biology and the way we think and the way we feel and illness. And I guess, another person I could mention would be Gabor Mate, right? Who's also written lots of books, several books around exactly what I've been talking about, that we're all traumatized.
sure.
We all have issues, and it's normal, you
Yeah,
know?
I don't know
Yeah,
anybody that doesn't think they have issues or haven't gone
yeah,
through some difficult. I think one of the problems I see, at least in the West here, is that we like to compare traumas and we like to judge like, oh, my trauma wasn't as bad as them, so I shouldn't have one. No, you should because they're scalable to your life.
exactly.
And
That's
I
right.
don't need to compare. Like that's one of the worst things we do with this. That's saying that comparison is the thief of joy, and it's not just good comparison. It's when we're even comparing how bad people had it. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's
If
crazy that
if you can come out of that, that makes a huge difference. Yes,
we
absolutely.
have to, right? At some point, you do, or you just like you said, at the end of your day, you live a life that you look back on and you go, man, this I don't know what could have been. I never gave myself the chance.
Exactly. That is so sad, isn't it? That is,
Terrible.
I believe so sad. It's To me, it's a waste of a life, right? And also spending years in therapy. For
Mhm.
me, looking at that, that's a waste of your life when you could just be moving on and,
Yeah.
might meeting a great partner, or having a wonderful time, or
You know,
exploring.
yeah, Yildiz, I even say it's not just like if I did that to myself, it's not just a waste of my life, but all the people that I crossed paths with that I didn't get to impact fully because I never gave myself that chance, they don't learn. They don't have the
That's
opportunity.
right. That's right. And also, I guess, if everybody was able to come out of this stuckness, be who they really need to be, and become happier, more joyful. Because I have to be honest, that the more I have got out of this having to please others, the happier I've been, right? And the healthier I've been actually as well, which is interesting, isn't it? And so if more people did this, wouldn't the consciousness of the world come up? You know,
Ah,
wouldn't
you,
it? Do you understand what I'm
no,
saying?
I
It's like,
100% agree. You're happier and healthier because you're finding a way to serve others that fulfills you, right? And like
exactly,
it, and our
right.
deep root of human being, we all want to be of service to others.
That's right. That's right.
Like we all
Right.
want our time here to be like, wow, we made a little bit of a difference. And I 100% agree with
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
that
exactly.
when we can find that balance of doing things that we value and that bring value to others, that is the sweet spot in life where you're going to thrive, which is what you're saying. Happy, healthy, that's thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And what I
exactly.
and what I love is you didn't come from the greatest of backgrounds and you found it.
No, no.
Right.
I
And
should
so
have been working in the factory. I should have been, you know,
but no, you stayed curious. You
and I
didn't.
kept thinking, no way, no
Right.
way. I didn't dare argue with my parents, by the way, because you were those, but I was just thinking, no way, I'm going to find a way out of this, and I
I
did.
love it. I love it.
Yeah,
And that's that fight and that spunk in life. Like we don't have to just live everybody else's life. And we don't have to live somebody else's life. But this leads to my last question for you is how can individuals take control of their mental health journey, which is part of their life, using your techniques? What would you say?
look, seeing somebody like me, and I've trained lots of people, by the way, it's not just me, because that's what I'm doing now. I can't do everything by myself. So I figured if I train as many people as I can, there's more people out in the world doing what I'm doing, which is helpful. Yeah, finding a good therapist who believes that you do not have to be ill forever, that has a belief that you can recover completely. Yeah.
I
If you
love it.
go to a therapist who says, look, Yildiz, you're pretty depressed, you're probably always going to be depressed, but we'll give you some tools to help you manage the symptoms. Forget it, like, that's not
Yeah.
enough. That's not good enough. Not in 2025 when we've got all the science that's telling us that that does not have to be the case, right?
Science and we got history, right? We can go back and look at the Eastern cultures like you did like in India, right? Where a lot of the spiritual mind body connection comes from
That's right. That's right.
that's
But
shown to work.
India itself is in a bad way too, of course, right? But there are the other side of India that's very much like I'm talking and like you're talking, that is looking to the bigger possibilities and yeah, coming out of that conditioning and limiting beliefs and all of that stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I love that you're focused on the what you constellation, family constellation,
yeah.
right? Because we do kind I kind of call that the backpack, right? We carry like a backpack of what our family's given to us. And we can keep
That's
carrying it and hand it to our kids, or we can get rid of some of that stuff from the backpack.
exactly, exactly. And if you tell people that they get it, um, it's really hard to understand how family constellations works, but just going through a process, people come out differently,
Mhm.
right? And I believe we haven't yet got the full science to explain how it works yet. Just as, 200 years ago, we didn't have the science to explain how we could get light bulbs on, but, didn't mean to say that they couldn't go on. It's just that we didn't yet have the knowledge for it. So if something works and I get profound results with people and for myself, then guess what? I'm going to use it.
Mhm.
And yeah.
I love it. Yildiz, thank you so much for joining us this week on the show. It's been awesome to talk with you. Where can our audience connect with you to find the book and just stay involved in your network, see where you're going?
Well, my book is on Amazon and hopefully bookshops generally, but Amazon definitely. My website is yildizsethi.com. That's just my name, yildizsethi.com. And work, training, and sessions, rapidcorehealing.com.
Awesome. Yildiz, thank you
And
so
I work,
much.
I work online, by the way, to let people know.
Yeah.
That's the big change I've made in my work. That you know, COVID. I thought, oh my God, my work's gonna just die, and we didn't know at that point whether we were all going to come out of it or not. So I put everything online, and so now I'm available online for training as well as sessions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor to share your story.
Thank you so much.